enter a world of mutants that can harness powerful abilities from the VHS that they absorb, battle other mutants to become the champion in Video Vortex. Thank you for joining me today at Tantrum House Studio D. I'm Kevin Delp. Video Vortex is a competitive deck building game for 2 to 4 players that is set in the futuristic radioactive Earth inhabited by mutants that are obsessed with videos. This is published by Mondo Games, and they sent us this copy to review. At the beginning of the game, players choose a mutant to play that comes with their own cards and special abilities. In the center of the table, that holds the Vortex deck and other cards that players might be able to add to their deck throughout the game. Here's a quick overview of Video Vortex. Over the course of many rounds, players are going to be playing cards from their hand, trying to forward other people's run times and rewind their own. Basically think of this as health. When a player is killed, the person who basically did that final killing blow gets to take one of that player's Be Kind tokens. Now, the player who's killed gets to immediately come back at full health, which is great, but the goal of the game is to get 3 unique Be Kind tokens and be the first one to do it to win the game. Each round begins with a sun phase, where players choose one sun for that round and are basically an added benefit like getting money, drawing cards, forwarding, rewinding, and things like that. Then you move to the action phase, where in turn order, players will be playing cards from their hand. On your turn, you'll be able to use energy to play cards from your hand. The cards pretty much tell you what they do, like forwarding other people's health or rewinding your own, gaining money. Now, there's not actual physical money that you're gaining. You just count up all the money that you have available, and you immediately use that money by buying cards in the Video Vortex supply. Some cards have immediate benefits when you get them. They're highlighted in pink. Some cards have sync abilities that activate with cards of the same genre, like sci-fi, action, etc. There are 2 main types of cards, SP and LP. SP gets discarded at the end of your turn into your personal discard pile, and LP stay out. Some of them are even shields that must be destroyed first before players can hurt your actual mutant. Also, you can spend charge cubes to activate your low-fi and high-fi powers. Each mutant has different ones. At the end of your turn, you'll discard any cards that are left in your hand, you'll discard any SP cards, you'll unexhaust LP cards, and you'll regain energy that you used during your turn. So basically you never really lose your energy. You'll also turn your sun tile face down. It tells you to gain an energy, a charge, and then draw 4 cards. And that is basically your turn, and then play goes to the next player. At the end of the round, the first player marker gets passed to the next player, and you'll begin a new round with the sun phase. You'll play round after round until the game is over, which is basically when one player can gain 3 unique Be Kind tokens. And I like how the Be Kind tokens work. It's nice that once one player doesn't have, like, say, a green Be Kind token, you can't go after them to get a green Be Kind token if that's what you need. There are ways to steal and things like that, but I don't really want to get into that right now. I think the Be Kind tokens are just a really nice way of spreading damage out to multiple players throughout the game. Also, once you're killed, your runtime resets to 0, so you're not as likely a target if others already have lost health. So let's first talk about a couple negatives, and then I'll move to my positives. I think the rulebook is probably one of the biggest negatives for me personally. They spent a lot of time on the story at the beginning of the rulebook. There was like 4 or 5 pages of story, and I wish they had spent a little bit more time on the rulebook. Not necessarily the rules themselves, but setup. I think that was the biggest thing for me, was setting up the game the first time. I had never seen this game before. I didn't know what the cards were. So I'm looking in the rules, and they're starting to say shuffle the video Vortex deck, and I'm like, I don't know what the Vortex deck is because all the cards have the same back. So I'm trying to figure that out. There's a lot of gray in the rule book and not a lot of because when you're trying to set up a game, you're trying to see what's in the rule book for setup, and you're seeing what your components are, and you're trying to match those two together to make sure you're setting up the game properly. That was a little frustrating for me personally. I wish there was a little bit maybe more pictures in the rule book to help me make sure I was setting it up properly. When you open the box for the first time, all the cards have the same back. And the listing of the cards say there are 216 of various types. Try my best to separate them. Bargain bins cards are labeled in the top right, but things like System Shock, Signal Splitters are labeled in the middle. I finally figured out that the 65 Vortex cards were the cards that had the different genres on them. Now, once I got past which cards were which and things like that, the rest of the setup went really well, and the gameplay rules were well laid out, and I think it's easily understandable what you're doing on your turn, especially if you're familiar with deck building games. One other minor complaint is the length. Not just the length of the game, but the length of a person's turn, especially in a 4-player game. It's going to get back. It can take a long time to get back to you, especially if you're the first player one round. You're going to be, it's going to take a long time to get back to you for that next round because that first player marker is passed. So it's going to take a long time for it to get back to you again after you've gone, I think it's like basically 6 turns before it gets back to you in a 4-player game. But the turns themselves can take a little bit longer than normal deck building games, and here's the main reason. Usually in a deck building game, when you're purchasing cards, you're purchasing them from the supply, wherever you're purchasing them from the main area, and you're putting them into your either deck, like in Taverns of Tiffenthal, or you're putting them into your discard pile, like you would in like Dominion. But in this game, you can take cards from the supply that you can purchase and put them immediately in your hand and use them and play them if you can, if you have enough energy or things like that. That's cool and all that. And I'll get to that a little bit, my positives. But it can be a little bit of a minor complaint because your turn can be a little bit longer than normal. Your turns, and as you're strategizing, you can strategize a little bit with the cards that are in your hand. But by the time it gets to your turn, you may not know you probably are not going to know what's in that video Vortex supply because players before you are taking those cards from the supply. So you can strategize a little bit, but it's just going to take a little bit longer. I think 4 players is a little bit too long for me personally. I think this game, deck building game, is probably best for me at 2 and 3 players. So let's talk about some of the positives. Even though a turn can take a little bit, I love the comboing that you can do with the cards. When they sync together, it's pretty cool having them all work together. I like games with variable player powers, and this game has it with all the different mutants. You can see what each of them does, and the cards also tell you the rated difficulty of that mutant, low, medium, or high. Also, I love that the starting player decks are asymmetric. Now, there are some cards that are the same from deck to deck, but you have those staff picks which really differentiate your deck from another player's deck, and I think that's really cool in a deck building game. The theme really comes through in the art and illustrations from Boneface. They're really unique and colorful ones. The player aid is super helpful. I'm so glad that they have that too. The components are very good quality, and you can tell that a lot of time was invested in making this a cohesive experience. Each of the player boards are individually illustrated. Their runtime dials are great, and the whole style for the game works so well with the theme. This game is replayable, it has variability with all the different cards and the mutants. If you're familiar with a game called Star Realms, that is also a deck building game that has that battle aspect, and if you're familiar with that, there are some similarities from Star Realms to Video Vortex with the battling deck building aspect, and you're trying to hit your opponents. There's also another similarity between these two games in that in Star Realms you can get protection, and you basically are protecting yourself and someone has to hit that protection before they can actually hit you. Video Vortex has the same idea with you can get cards that can shield you, so that those cards have to be basically destroyed before they can hit your mutant. So there's some similarities there. If you love deck building games, and you like games like Star Realms, if that is something that you're familiar with, then Video Vortex is right up your alley from Mondo Games. I will have a link below in the description to mondotees.com where you can purchase this game, and it will also be in retail soon. And as always, would love for you to subscribe to Tantrum House.